Hello, my wonderful people on Life and Living with Samson Olatunji. We are here again to talk about another thing that is very important to the continued enjoyment of our good life, and that is how to manage forgiveness. I want to start with a story, but before I do that, I want to first register the fact that this is not intended to be a Bible study. However, since I believe that any piece of literature in which there is a story that teaches lessons, such should be taken seriously. That's why we want to use this story now. It's a story of two warriors in Israel known as Abner and Joab. Before I continue, I want to give kudos to Reverend Dr. Edward Kinde Alabi, popularly known as Eddie K, the pastor in charge of Malete Baptist Church, Ibadan in Nigeria. I was privileged to listen to him give an exposition on this story, and I went away with a lot of lessons for life and living. And that's why it's from there that I'm bringing out this topic, how to manage forgiveness. Now, Joab was a great warrior. Abner was a greater warrior, as we have it on record. Now, Joab was the leader of David's army, while Abner was unfortunate to be the leader of King Saul's army. One day, the lieutenants of Joab were somewhere. Abner was by the other side of the river, along with his own lieutenants too. And when there was a kind of argument about their war skills, they challenged one another to a fight. And when they were fighting, the younger brother of Joab became dangerously overambitious. He faced Abner, and Abner knew there was no way this young man could defeat him. He started running away from the young man. And he was telling the young man, please turn away from me. Turn either to the right or to the left, face any of my lieutenants, and I wish you'll be able to overcome him. If you follow me, you are committing suicide. But this young man would not listen to that warning. And so when it was becoming very obvious that Abner was running away from that young man, he had no other option than to kill him. And as we have it recorded, he didn't have to turn around to kill him. He was running forward and he was still able to kill him, showing the disparity in war skills between them. I don't know, we are not told what happened afterwards, what report was given to Joab, but I believe somebody in his team must have told him how much effort Abner put into trying not to kill his younger brother. So a few years later, King Saul died, and Abner was the one that suggested to the whole of Israel that David should be made king. And he was sent to go and deliver that message of goodwill to David. When he got to David, Joab was away. When Joab learned what had happened, he ran after Abner, spoke to him like a friend, and while that one moved nearer, and it was as if they wanted to embrace each other, Joab quickly drew out his sword and killed Abner. David first rained curses on Joab and his generations to show that he had no hand in the killing and the murder of this man. But he asked questions. He asked Abner, "Oh, Abner, did you have to die like a fool? Were your hands tied that somebody not as skilled as you killed you?" That is why we want to talk about how to manage forgiveness. Know that whoever doesn't forgive is inviting curses, as Joab did. And also know that if somebody is not able to manage forgiveness from others, that person may be endangering their own life. And so we are going to continue this after this time out. Thank you. Come back. We are still talking about how to manage forgiveness, but we need to know what forgiveness is. What is forgiveness? Forgiveness can be described as letting go of hard feelings against anyone that has offended you. That is forgiveness. Why must we forgive? The first reason we have to forgive is that if you forgive, you are doing it for your sake, not for the sake of the person that has offended you. Because unforgiveness is a kind of toxic emotion that destroys one's mental energy. So you have to forgive. You know that because Refusing to forgive is like drinking poison and expecting the offender, another person, to die, as late Dr. Nelson Mandela described it. So that is true. A second reason we have to forgive is something that has to do with the law of sowing and reaping. If you want forgiveness, you have to forgive others. That is not only a law that applies to agriculture. Know that. A third reason is that we need to forgive to avoid social blockage. If we don't forgive and we know we cannot succeed alone, we need people to succeed, we are depriving ourselves of the blessings that come from forgiving other people and encouraging them to assist us. And this has been really demonstrated by the level of development that Rwanda has recorded after the cultural genocide that happened. They are forgiving one another, and that country is making very speedy progress, which wouldn't have been possible if they had been holding animosity against one another for that genocide. South Africa also, under late Dr. Nelson Mandela, made progress because Dr. Nelson Mandela decided to forgive all those that had wronged him. A fourth reason we have to forgive is that somebody that hurts you today may help you tomorrow. If you don't let go of the hard feelings, the help that is coming tomorrow may be blocked. A fifth reason is that the so-called offender may not be guilty after all, or may not be as guilty as you thought. But it's when you forgive that you create the platform for better understanding. A sixth reason we need to forgive is that you also offend people. I also offend people. So why should I find it difficult to forgive people? Now, we've known why we should forgive, but how do we achieve this? Number one is that you need to be ever forward looking. When you are looking forward, you have goals you want to achieve, you won't have time to be brooding over one kind of injustice that somebody did against you some time ago. You won't have time for that. A second way to learn how to forgive is to cultivate the spirit of gratitude. If people, you see, people that are close to you are the ones that can offend you. But while they were doing good to you, if you had been taking cognizance of those things, taking records, they would act as a kind of cushioning mechanism against the weight of that offense. Because all the good they must have done would have been recorded as their deposits into your social life. And so when they now offend you, it's possible that the deposit will be weightier than the withdrawal, which is the offense. And even if the offense outweighs the deposit, you will know that the weight will be reduced. A third thing you have to do is to learn to forgive yourself. If you psychoanalyze yourself, in every case in which you have found it difficult to forgive, you will realize that the root of that unforgiveness is the unforgiveness you have against yourself for allowing them to go so far as to do that to you. So if you learn to forgive yourself, you will find it easier to forgive others too for what they do against you. A fourth mechanism is that you have to nurture sincere humility. More often than not, the major reason we get offended is that we have a higher perception of ourselves than we actually are. That is it. Don't think more highly of yourself than you ought to think, and you won't get too much offended by what people do. The fifth strategy is that you keep on reminding yourself of that time that you got your finger burnt while working with fire, or that you've got your hand cut by a knife when using a knife. And when you consider the fact that you did not afterwards say you would never use a knife again, that you would never go near fire again, which means you forgave the knives, you forgave the fire, and you are still enjoying the services of these things. So that will help you to forgive others. A sixth strategy that you have to use is to always keep in mind the law of sowing and reaping. Somebody who has offended you can never go scot-free. That law cannot be circumvented. Whether you forgive the person or not, they will still bear the consequence of that offense. So why do you want to turn yourself to the complainant, the prosecutor, the judge, the witness, and the executor of the judgment yourself? So just forget about it. Let it go. Consequences will always come for what evil they have done against you. Lastly, I want to tell you, we have to learn to pray for those who have offended us, to forgive them in prayer, and also pray that God will enable us to forgive others. Why do I say that? It's a popular saying that to err is human, to forgive is divine. So, how can you do what is divine without the help of divinity? That is it. But there is a caveat that I want you to also go away with from this discussion. It is that you must learn not to equate forgiveness with trust. The fact that you have forgiven somebody should not mean that you demonstrate the same level of trust that you had for them before that offense. Psychoanalyze the person. What this person has done against me, is it a part of his character? If it's a part of his character, you won't expect him to change. He may have asked for forgiveness, don't expect him to change. So don't allow him to complete the evil task he wanted to carry out on you before. That is it. But forgive, do good to them, but you may not have to trust them the way you used to do. Just imagine you invited somebody to live with you in your house, and one night you see that person holding a knife, looking at you furtively. And when you woke up, they try to hide the knife. And now the person begins to beg you for forgiveness. Will you still keep that person living under the same roof with you? You wouldn't do that. Whoever does that is inviting that person to kill him or her the following day. So differentiate between trust and forgiveness. And then you are good to go. Thank you once again. Your Samson Ratonji, Life and Living. I love you.